right. Hello, everybody. This is Tom Randolph from GoldenCare. I want to welcome you to this Integrity Short-Term Care Initiative training. I'm joined with my partner in crime here, Dennis Reiner from GoldenCare as well. And Dennis and I have had the pleasure of working together for just years and years and years in this industry. And today we're trying to keep these webinars shorter because, as you know, Dennis and I have done like 35 of them the first time around or 30 of them or something. And now the second batch of webinars we're doing 48 of them or so in 38 days. So we want to try to shorten the webinars a little bit. So I'm not going to do the intro. If you happen to be first time on here, do yourself a favor and go on, not obviously just to hear about Dennis and myself, but we talk a lot about the method or madness and why we're on this call, because it's such a needed thing for all the Americans with baby boomers, 10,000 per day turning 65. We know that it's so important that we get out there and help people, whether you're selling med sups or anything else. We need to go out and help people and do our job. So we have all the recorded. We'll show you before this ends today, our site where all these recorded webinars are, and jump on one of those earlier ones where we go into a little more detail on that. But today, again, in essence, trying to shorten these up a little bit so your time is valuable. We're going to try to skip that intro part and let you know that you're in great hands with Dennis. Dennis has had the ability to train tens or hundreds of thousands of agents at this point, I've trained tens of thousands of agents myself. So we've really been into the sales side of it. And these are one of those fun webinars where product webinars can get a little boring. And we get in talking about you need to understand the products a little bit so you know what you're selling. But the main thing is creating that conversation. That's the most important part. Start that conversation. And then we'll find out that we need to find out how just to help you a little bit. And we're going to show you how easy it is. We talk a lot about pushing the easy button. And the first one is right here. I'll just keep going, Dennis, and then I'll turn it over to you and we'll go back and forth like we usually do. But remember, the first one is that when you're selling a med sup or you're selling a life policy or whatever you might be selling, we talk a lot in our other webinars and on our site about all the different areas and underwriting what we have products available for you in this short-term care initiative. But the main thing is that first step, and so many agents don't do it. If you look at studies, 48% of agents out there don't even ask for the close of their primary product when they give presentations. So I know you guys on this call are pros, so you understand that you have to ask for the close and you finalize the sale. Now what we want you to do is just go a step further, and it's going to be so many beneficial things for you that you've heard me say many times on the other webinars. So basically you can do it as simple as finishing up saying, Jim, Betty, you know what? I'm glad we got this med sup or this life policy or annuity, whatever it might be, your primary product. Keep your focus on that first. And then all you have to do is something literally as simple as saying, before I let you go, I want to make sure that you have your extended care taken care of, because it's such an important thing in America right now. 90% of adults haven't had the conversation, and I want to make sure I at least bring it up to you because it's so important that you have some type of protection for yourself and your family. Do you guys have something in place? And you know what? It's amazing how simple that one little line is, because you know what? Dennis, we can tell stories about how he's literally turned heads and almost closed sales in 5 or 10 minutes or 15 minutes at breakfast with strangers. So you can really start the conversation now. But the first objection we always talk about is a lot of times the smoke objection. And I think you guys all know this if you've been out in the trenches or sold anything in your life, is basically it's human nature where people don't want to spend more money. You know what I mean? They just bought the med sup from you, the final expense or whatever. And a lot of times they're just going to say, oh, yeah, I got that all taken care of. So don't stop there and just say, oh, good, thumbs up, appreciate it. Make sure you just smoke it out a little bit and just make sure you say, oh, God, I'm so glad to hear that. What do you have in place? What kind of policy do you have in place? And then a lot of times what they're going to do is, like I said, it's a human nature. They're just trying to say, you know what, I don't want to spend any more money today. I already made one decision. I don't know now if this guy's going to come in and hit me hard with something. So a lot of times they just don't want to deal with it, but it doesn't take much to get over that smoke objection, right? So again, doesn't have any bearing on the buying decision most of the time. Literally, they're just trying to say, you know what, even if you go through some of the sales, they'll say, I need to think about it. And we talk about that's kind of a smoke objection a lot of times and Dennis and I can show you how to get around that as well. It's just saying, let me find out what you need to think about, because a lot of people lose the retention of what we talked about. So anyway, I wanted to hit that early one, Dennis, just because we know that's part of the game. And I'll turn it over to you and you can kind of go back and forth and we'll go from there. It might be on mute, Dan.
Oh, I am sorry.
No problem.
I wasn't coughing though. Hey, thanks, Tom. You know, there are a lot of these objections that we're going to talk about today. I don't think you're going to encounter as many as we've encountered in our early years, especially when long-term care was what we used to call a push sale. You'd have to push it on to people to get them to really lean in, as Tom said. And maybe if you were cross-selling or packaging something else, like a Medicare sale or a annuity sale or even a life insurance sale. And it is human nature, as Tom said, that people have certain budget, considerations, and oftentimes they spend more time, quite frankly, planning their next vacation than they will actually thinking about the decision to, take care of something as important as this extended care conversation that Tom just gave you the best way to actually set the stage and introduce it. So let me give you a couple of little tips here that will help you, and we could actually design a full presentation on this. But really, when you get into your conversation, if you handle it the right way, in most cases, you can take most of these objections really off the table by just being proactive and actually bringing them up. Um, this aspect of the health. One of the things I try very early on to instill in agents and have done in my own selling and consumer workshops, as Tom alluded to, is get people to admit that their health could change. And by having them acknowledge that, and by basically just conversationally talking about the fact that they're going to live a long life, and probably not today because Bob and Mary, you guys look like you're in great health, but what do you think could happen along the way that could cause your health to change? And by posing a question like that, what could surface, would happen is that you might find some of the health things will just come up naturally. You don't have to get into a long, drawn out, pulling out the app. And yeah, it's always good to be able to have questions right there to make sure when you're pre-screening. But same thing when it comes to the kids and the family members, and you just need to make this very conversational. Price is always a consideration, but today with these extended care plans, boy, they're so much more affordable than some of the alternatives with traditional long-term care or even the hybrids. You can design these plans really for any budget. So I would just say that as you look at these objections, you're going to have to ask yourself probably these three questions. And the three questions are, do I need this product? Do I like this product? Can I afford this product? And remember that I personally feel very strongly that people don't always necessarily, buy what they need, but they certainly almost always will buy what they want. And there is a difference. You've got to make sure that they're wanting what it is that you're talking about, because if not, then it's very easy for them to have an objection where they just don't see the relevancy. They haven't recognized the need, and as such, and again, a lot of this is just conversational. You don't have to, if you go out, as Tom indicated earlier, we've been doing this a long, long time. You don't have to do this a long time. In your first week of actually having these conversations with people, you'll probably know where all the objections are, because they're all very, very common, that people will begin to, share with you, and you'll begin to see them over and over again, almost in every interview. And again, there's an old adage that says the person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. So remember, we're not trying to necessarily convince people against their will. What we're trying to do is make sure that when we're having this conversation, that we can not put ourselves in a defensive position. We want to make sure that we are basically being proactive and making it just natural as part of the process. And so, people do have these various fears. The fear of making it a decision. There's people who they're procrastinators. Let's face it. Their fear of making a wrong decision. Lack of trust, lack of understanding, lack of urgency. I have actually, Tom, as you know, we put on the site a little simple fireside chat about 7 reasons why people don't buy. And they all start with the word no. And so, you need to make sure that, and I'll just run through those just to tell you, because it all kind of comes back into the same slide here that you're seeing, but just set up just a little bit differently. No need, no help, no hurry, no time, no want, no like, and no money. So you almost could have your own little checklist in your mind as you're having this conversation and thinking, where am I with what is the roadblock? Is it that they haven't recognized the need? Are they on the no help? Are they a do it themselves, where they think that if they go through you, they're going to spend more money? Is that their objection? That they just want to research on their own and make a decision on their own? So we could go through, and I would encourage you maybe to go back and listen to that 7 reasons why people don't buy, because it'll kind of focus on this particular slide that Tom has up in front of us. So I think going forward, Tom, one of the things is we can just address some of the common objections. And I'm going to just start off here, and then Tom, feel free to jump back in. I know that you're as familiar with these as I am. And again, I hope that you understand, in most cases, all you're trying to do is be prepared. You're probably not going to encounter every single one of these objections. Many of your presentations will run smoothly, and you'll be surprised at people who just recognize the need, and they've had an experience, and they've raised their hand and said, yeah, how do I get started? Of course, sometimes when there is a little bit too anxiousness on the part of a client, you need to be a little mindful of that, because maybe something's changed within their health, and they're now feeling like they have to rush to get coverage because their health has changed. But generally speaking, if you look at these, Tom, for the Medicare agents, a big misconception, right? Medicare will pay for it. That really is part of the fact that where people have this myth that they think they're actually covered, or they think actually that Medicare will take care of it, when in reality Medicare will not take care of it, at least not to the extent. Medicare, it was never intended to pay for long-term care or any of these even short-term care situations. And so you need to be able to take these objections off the table. And one of the techniques I've used very successfully, I'll walk you through these 4 steps, if you will, or 4 reminders. And then, Tom, we can actually address and go through this list. But so let's just pick this aspect of cost. Tom talked about cost and about budgeting for premiums. We mentioned that a little bit earlier. So here's kind of the formula that I like to use, which is I like to use the formula that goes like this. Number 1, we need to surface the objection. As I mentioned to you earlier, we need to be proactive. So we surface it, we isolate it. Number 2, we address it. Number 3, and number 4, we overcome it. And it's a really simple technique. If you remember that, no matter what the objection is, you'll find that it'll work for you. So as an example, when you've asked someone if they've ever looked into this topic of extended care, Tom mentioned about how you complete that story about who do you have your extended care planning through, or have you taken care of your extended care needs? And oh yeah, I looked into that. And well, what did you learn about these types of products? And the clients can come back and say, well, I don't think I can really afford it. We already have this med sup and that we're doing, as he said, and people just sometimes don't want to spend money. That's the reality. They don't want to reach into their pocket and pay for something else. They feel like they're overloaded with insurance expenses between their auto, their homeowners, everything else. And so they might think it's too expensive. And so one of the ways to handle that is, let's come back to that little 4-step process. So we brought it up, we surfaced it. Now, how do we isolate it? And one of the techniques that's very easy is in a conversation. And again, I'm just using Bob and Mary as our example. Is Bob and Mary. So you mentioned that you've looked into it and you've just felt it was too expensive. Let me ask you a question. Other than cost, listen very carefully. Other than cost, was there anything else that held you back from moving ahead? Now, what I've just done there is, by surfacing it, by isolating it, I've now am putting them back into a position where they have to answer and tell me, is cost the only thing that was holding them back? Or, gee, is it that their family will take care of them? Or is it that Medicare will pay? I can get all of the other objections, if there are other objections, just by simply asking that question, other than cost. And now, as I have isolated it, I address it saying, if we could find a situation where we could make sure, and you can talk about the budget parameters, that it would be something that you could budget today, now we're addressing it. Is there anything else other than just the budgeting issue that would, again, hold you back? No, that's pretty much it. Okay. Now I've been able to, again, surface, isolate, address, and I can overcome it. I can overcome cost. I can overcome any of those objections if you basically just have a simple approach. Tom, you may want to jump in and just talk, about like the government. I know we're going to have a webinar a little bit later today on Medicaid, but any of the other ones that hit home, because we could actually spend a whole half hour just going through every single objection.
Right. No, and I really want to add on the emphasis on what you talked about, those 4 rules of any objection, because it's kind of sales 101, but a lot of your agents that you're working with, or maybe yourself, if you're out in the field, there's a lot of times you forget that, right? I mean, look at what he did on a psychological basis even. And again, I'm just trying to cover the whole realm of what Dennis is talking about. When you surface an objection, those first 2 steps are so important. There's so many agents who go right away and they say, well, my family will take care of me. And they just go and they skip the first 2 steps of surfacing it and isolating it. They go right to addressing it and overcoming it. And you know what? That's great. It's better than just saying, well, boy, you got me there. I guess I don't know the answer. But it's so important to do what Dennis said, because think of the psychological side of it. I surfaced it. I talked about the fact that, I understand a lot of my clients are worried about the cost of it. And I want to show you today, we got a lot of affordable plans, and the way you can leverage this, it's usually a really smart decision. But let me ask you this. Is that the main reason? Is that the main thing you're looking at? When you isolate it, what it does is puts them on the spot. And number one, they better start thinking of a couple other things, or they've just told you as a trusted advisor looking across the table, you just sold them a med sup or a life policy or something else. These are trusting clients. They have that little bit of urgency of saying, oh, now I feel dumb because I kind of told them that, no, that was the only thing I was really worried about. Now he did a great job of kind of answering that. And now I feel like it's harder for me to say, no, maybe I just want to think about this. I want to wait. Because at the end of the day, remember, we're not going in and we're not snake oil salespeople. We're going in and we're selling something that's so valuable to them. No matter what product you have, you'll hear us say throughout this training, we're selling something that they're going to thank you for later. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know when they're going to go on claim or if or how intense it'll be. But I do know this, overwhelmingly, the odds are saying they're going to need help at some point, especially with these short-term care products, because they cover those things like hip replacement, surgeries, et cetera. So feel good about the fact that if you get something in place, you're helping this client, make sure it's affordable, and all those other things we talk about designing a plan. But really good, Dennis, and I appreciate how well you hit on that. And I want to just push it again, because that to me is the key to objections, is making sure you understand and say, isolate it and then address it. And when you address it, that part, like Dennis said, is pretty easy. Medicare is going to pay for it. That part's easy. Most of you on this call probably are Medicare experts, and you understand the whole fact that Medicare, remember, you got to be getting better. It's acute care. That's why we have immediate care taken care of with our Medicare med sups and stuff. But we need the extended care for people once they start they're in a situation where they might need extended care for custodial stuff. So that part's easy. Medicaid is another one, kind of links in there. And boy, you know, we've given hour and a half long seminars to literally legislative officials on this stuff about Medicaid, because Medicaid is one of those things later on today. If you want to get deeper, we have a Medicaid spend down where we kind of explain that in the partnership plan with long-term care and show you how to kind of defer that conversation so you don't have to get into the weeds on it, because we don't want you guys to feel like you have to be unbelievable specialists who do this all the time. But Medicaid's an easy one. Medicaid, remember, is that it's kind of a welfare program between the state and federal government. And with that one, it's kind of, it has been an entitlement mentality out there. But what we show people is there's a lot of other things that come into Medicaid that you might not think about. And one of them is the spend down that we certainly can explain to you pretty easily. The second one is just plain old care. And we, again, I could bore you to tears with statistics about, we have so many seniors in America, and with the baby boomers turning age 65, there's going to be so much pressure on these programs. You probably heard about it just in the periphery, but they don't talk about it on the news all the time because it's so doom and gloom. But at the end of the day, you've heard Social Security, the number one expense, is in trouble and bankrupt. You've heard about these unfunded liabilities. You know, Medicare is the number 2 cost in this country, right there with defense now, about equal. And Medicaid's right there. And they're saying Medicaid budgets will be over $1 trillion by 2030. So these states are going to be hit hard. They're not having extra income coming into the states, are they? And they're out there saying, I'm not going to be able to help with everything going on. And Medicaid budgets are going to get pushed down, and Medicare payments are going to get pushed down. You already hear about it. Nursing home facilities and assisted livings, but especially nursing facilities, are getting killed. Home health people can't keep good people on because they're not getting paid enough by these government programs. So again, I could go into this deeper than I am now. And again, I don't mean to bore you with it, but it's really something that once you get your arms around it a little bit, there's a few bullet points you can talk about just to say, remember, if the states get pushed too hard and those budgets go down, they start moving people out of Medicaid beds and moving to different nursing homes, et cetera. And it ends up causing a problem. So I don't know if you can see that Ring Central thing there, Dennis. It started.
Yeah, I did, Tom. Hey, Tom, I want to pick back up on, we're going to go to this next visual, but on this idea that, people will say, hey, I can self-insure. What they're really saying is, I'm just going to retain this risk because I really don't think it's ever going to happen to me. So therefore, I'll just use my own money if that's the case. And so, Tom, this is a great way to show people the power of leverage. I always like to say when I encounter that, again, that's, come back and just remember those 4 steps: to surface, isolate, address, and overcome. Because all the things that don't work, Tom and I aren't telling you about today, but that's something I used by trial and error many, many years ago. And, the things that work, you keep on using them. The things that don't work, you adjust your game plan. And here's an example, though, to show people just the power of leverage in terms of break even, and why someone would not want to use what I call, hurting mom. Mom represents my own money. Why would you want to retain the risk when you can use OPM, other people's money? And this is the power of leverage. Look at that in terms of $100 a day benefit for home health care and facility. And there's also an ability with, and this is just an Omniflex example, where there's the RX reimbursement for the prescription drug, where seniors, today, if it's an older age client, probably is having, the average senior has about 27 medications that they either are getting prescribed for the first time or getting refilled on a regular basis. And so, the premium could get adjusted down from that $739 to $439. And you can look and see, Tom, if they went on claim in 6 years or went on claim in 15 years, how many days it would actually take to get back every dollar that they paid in. So remember, there's a balance when we're dealing with objections where people have an emotional side of them and they get kind of dug in, like my family will take care of me, and they're very prideful about the fact that they have a very loving, supporting family that live, all the kids and all the grandkids and, all their cousins. They all live within a city block, as an example of each other. And they just think, hey, I've got something to rely upon. It's no different than the idea of someone thinking that they can use their own money. But that's just an example, Tom, on really the power of the leverage.
Yeah, and again, on this one, this is just more of a detailed thing, and it's not any of the plans you give are great. Just Omniflex happened to have that prescription drug reimbursement, so it really showed a powerful example. But even if you look here at the first number, remember $739 a year, that's like $65 a month or something. That's really pretty affordable for most people who are 65 when you're out selling a product to them. And look at that when you look at it and say, in any time in your life, if you have 45 to 111 days of care, that breaks you even. I mean, that's 6.5 times you're leveraging based on your premium dollars you're paying in, even if you did it for a full 15 years in this case. So it really, at any time people go on claim with these dollars, it pays for them to do it. And Dennis was kind of alluding to this and talked this out, but the simplest way a lot of times when they say, well, I'm just going to pay for it myself, or I can't afford it, that other flip side where they say, you know what, I really, right now, I'm a little tight in budget, can't really afford it, and say, that's why I know it's so important to talk to you. And that's why 90% of the people have never had a conversation, because everybody feels like it's extra money out now, but trust me, it's leverage money that's really a smart investment, because if you can't afford it now on your own, imagine if suddenly, God forbid, something happened to you, then you're spending mom's money, right? Now you got your own money at $5,000 or $6,000 a month. And that can be devastating. And 3 out of every 5 individual bankruptcies in America are caused by people who have medical expenses that they weren't ready for. So it's really something to really stress to people when you get into those situations. So good job, Dennis, on that.
Yeah, and Tom, these are all, just like I can buy coverage, later. That's the no hurry I just talked about a little bit earlier on the 7 reasons that people don't think there's a sense of urgency. And again, part of this is storytelling, part of it is logic, part of it is in that storytelling, sharing some of the emotion. But really remember, it's all conversational. And again, in most cases, depending upon who it is that you're in front of, you can make this, for example, in the Medicare space, we try to make this not when we're talking about extended care, that it's not nice to have, it's a have to have, and you make them feel like it's the missing half of their program, and so some of these objections won't necessarily even probably come up, but it's just good to use those. It's good to use the leverage, this budgeting concept of if you come back to that last visual, Tom, about the scales. I like to tell clients, when you're really getting into talking about this aspect and they're really pushing back on not wanting to move forward, then it's you almost have to be as straightforward as you can be and just say, Bob and Mary, if you're struggling today with the idea of setting aside, $300 combined for a program, and if you can't afford the premium, I have to be honest with you. You're never going to be able to afford the event. And I'm going to tell you, the light goes on, because the event is when they have that event and they have to reach into their pocket and pay that $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000, it becomes much easier for them to think about budgeting something that can fit into their budget, that they can set aside. And back to what Tom said about the earlier example, $65 a month. I mean, these plans, you don't have to give people the perfect panacea here. All you have to do is give people coverage that makes sense for them, that fits what their needs are. But again, this is all conversational to make sure that you handle each of the things that come up. And the best way to handle the things that come up is for you to bring them up, not to wait for them to bring it up. Because when they bring up the objection, then again, you're having to put yourself on the defensive on how you handle it. When you make it part of the conversation and you surface these objections and just one by one, make it just an easy part of the casual conversation you're having, it is so much more powerful. And again, remember, you buy these programs today, every single one of them, that generally will have some form of a health criteria that's associated. So you got to make sure that you're not just focused on the financial side, that you focus on the health side and make sure that they're able to get the coverage. And that's why it's so important. If you've ever attended our training on the how to start the conversation, we talked about the 5-step selling process. We talked about health matters, and it really does, because you need to know where you stand, because you can't lead with a solution unless you know where they are from a qualifying standpoint. So,
Yeah.
Tom, I know that there's lots of good things that we can continue to do and talk about this, because we could actually just go deeper and deeper. But the main thing is that those who are on the call know that it's just important for you to look at those and become familiar with those objections, and there's not any of them that will surprise you.
Right, absolutely. Though, if we were on the screen that had that list earlier, I mean, my family will take care of me. That's something you'll find out in your warm up, and some of you already know your clients. And if they have, 2 kids or are living 15 states away, that that's not going to be as easy for them. But even if they did say my kids are next door and they've really planned on it, and I've got a couple daughters who are really ready to help me out, remember, you have that same thing where you can say, that's great. And you don't have to do scare tactics or anything like that. You just say that, how great is that? How lucky are you to be in that situation? More and more of my clients today can't say that. So I'm so glad for you. And remember, some of these products today, number one, they're indemnity plans. So you have extra cash to be able to help them take time off work or for travel or whatever the case may be. And secondly, some of them actually have a cash benefit. We've got GTL that has a $3,500 upfront that once they get certified, and it's a simple process, they can get some cash. And Omniflex has an ongoing cash benefit for spouses, family, friends, etc. So we have ways that you can get over that objection if they're saying I'm just going to lean on the kids. If you need to go further, we have lots of backup material on that as well, of talking about, what sometimes it's not the comfortable stuff you're doing with the kids, like bathing and dressing and some of the more detailed things. If you get really old, when you get really older, that you can have a specialist come in and take care of some of those things you don't want to talk about as much. So you can do both. And as far as waiting, people say, hey, let me think about it for a while. That's locking in the coverage. Presentation retention, again, that thing below is more long-term care. We'll talk about it. I'm so busy I can't get back, but the main thing is just retention. This is all sales 101, right? The best part about retention is, unfortunately, if you say you're going to think about it, chances are we're not going to talk again, because you're going to forget half what I said by tomorrow, and a couple days later you're going to forget more, and then the urgency's gone, and pretty soon you put it off when you have the best intentions and we don't get around to it. So anyway, I just wanted to cover, Dennis. I think we should probably go out to the site, but we do have more information up here and different things about, this is a great one, by the way. If you talk about, well, I don't think I'll ever need it. You don't hear about this as much anymore, because now people are starting to realize it doesn't take much to convince them that, hey, you ever see yourself having surgery, hip replacement, knee replacement, some type of fall that you fracture yourself when you get older. Nowadays, there's so much gray hair in America. People realize they're probably going to use a plan like this. So they do see that their risk is there. But, we have always had this old slide that just shows that, like anything visual, saying, what, people, all of homeowners insurance, 1 in 1,200 that you're going to have your house burned down. Yeah, the odds of being in a major auto crash that's going to cause $10,000 of damage is $5 in $1,200, or 5 in 1,200. I said dollars, sorry. And the odds of being hospitalized, 105 in 1,200 for a little bit more major hospitalization. And then you look over here in long-term care and you can look at that 70%. So anyway, just wanted to show you that there's lots of ways to get around those different things that we see. And Dennis, I'll go out to the site here if I can get back on it. Go ahead and fill while
and I think Tom, once again, I said this earlier. The person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. Remember, the objections that you're going to hear and that you're going to just bring up to try to take off the table, they either fall into 2 categories. Either they're a misunderstanding that the client thinks they're covered, like the Medicare, hey, doesn't Medicare cover long-term care? Or they're going to fall into the category of being a perceived drawback. Now, not everyone that you talk with And all you're trying to do is you're trying to serve more people and help more people, but not everyone is going to embrace and move forward. I'd like to think that, and anyone who says, "Oh, I have 100% close ratio," every closing ratio, everyone I talk to buys. Well, okay, I'd like to travel with you and go out and watch, because in most cases, there are certain circumstances where people won't buy, and whether it's that family objection, even though you've talked about the cash and you can take that objection off the table. Don't give up on the fact that just because you encounter situations where someone didn't move ahead, realize that it's all about the at bats. It's all about swinging, and the more you're up at the plate and the more you're swinging, you are going to have a high percentage chance of hitting and connecting and getting people to move ahead. So I just want people to know that, Tom, that misunderstandings are the things that we're talking about today. Perceived drawbacks are things that people just they hunker down, and they are just, no matter what you say. And when you can bring these up early on, then early on, you're going to know whether or not you should actually be even staying in that home or staying on that Zoom call. If you can't get people to agree on certain basic common sense principles that we're talking about. So that's just something to be aware of also when we're dealing with objections.
Right. That analogy is great because, again, it's such a balancing act, and we've been training agents for years, and most of you on this call, maybe you have a lot of experience as well, so you know all this. But it's like baseball. Baseball is a game built on failures, right? And you have to have that great hitter up there knowing who knows there's a good chance I'm going to strike out or I'm going to get an out here. But you got to keep getting up to the bat. You got to keep getting up to the plate and giving yourself a chance, like Dennis said. So number one, don't walk away and take that as an out to say, good, I like to sell Medicare. I don't want to go out of my comfort zone and ask that question. That's the part we don't want you to avoid, because you do have to step up to the plate, like Dennis said, and don't get discouraged if you struggle and you can't get it, because the good news about you folks is this isn't a big push sale anymore, and you have a lot of people with your existing clients. So there are people who are going to be eager. We call it a perfect storm in this industry, you guys. Right now, there's people who are out there in this next 6-7 years. They're going to see a huge turmoil in America as people are realizing, wow, I wish I would have planned ahead, because states are going to start doing some drastic things. And, I won't bore you with all of it today, but we do have a gray hair emergency coming in America here. And there's going to be people saying, I wish I would have planned ahead and got something in place, because all of a sudden this care situation is going to get a little bit more dire. So the more people you can help now, they're going to thank you later. So let's jump into this website real quick, just to show you again. I use the cliche where you don't throw you out of a plane without a parachute. Some of you have been on other calls, have seen all this, but here's all of our product information, all the way down to 6 products that we use as our perfect portfolio and our Integrity Short-Term Care Initiative. And we have product training and all that on this stuff. There's our InstaPivot underwriting tool if you need that. Remember, like Dennis said, you buy this more with your health and your checkbook nowadays. So you need to know which products they'll qualify for. And there's real easy ways to do that. You can see in our training. Here's some great quotes just to talk about the fact that people are going to need to have care. And then down here, we have your full video collection. If any of you are new on this call today or missed part of it, go to some of these earlier ones. You can go out here. I think I'll take a second to open it, Dennis. You can go out here and see all the different trainings that we have and all these different products. It'll take a second to load here on a webinar, but all these will have little headings: short-term care sales. Here's Omniflex. Here's Awareness Month. All these different trainings. So listen to some of those intros talking about some of the stats, so you know how dire it is right now and how important it is to talk to people. We have facts videos that talk about some different product facts and some of the powers of these plans. Here's that InstaPivot tool again. And again, if you want to recruit agents, we've got materials to help you do that. And if you want to get consumers, we've got a great info pack there. Dennis mentioned earlier these presentations that he gave, the fireside chat, et cetera. So everything you need to have success is there. The biggest thing, again, Dennis, I'll let you wrap it up, but the biggest thing is making sure that we're here to help you. We're committed to this, and your marketers who got you on this call, are committed to help you. We're going to try to help them as their backbone and, if you will, or their foundation from the team here. And then they're going to be able to hopefully help you agents as well. So if we can do this right, we've got a lot of people out there to help, and we got a lot of potential to do some great things here in America. So it's a good money maker for you. It's a good persistency keeper, and it keeps you guys in the driver's seat with your clients holding on to that business. So it's an important step that way too. So Dennis, I'll let you close her out.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. And and also think about this from a referral standpoint. When you help people who don't think they could actually get coverage, they know other people who may be in similar health circumstances that they want to, share this information with. And so again, you're being that resource. Remember, it starts with you. You're the messenger. And if you're not the messenger, then someone else is going to be the messenger, and it may jeopardize your core book of your business. Because you weren't that resource. And the message is easy today. The message of dealing with objections, we've talked about it, and it said, the best way is to put yourself in a position of strength and be proactive and not be reactive. And then, of course, when it comes down to it, probably the biggest of all the objections that you're ever going to encounter is that people just don't want to reach into their pocket and pay for it. And so you've got to know how to deal with the money objection. And all of them, as we've talked about, they all kind of cumulatively can add up. And just remember, once again, help people to get clarification when there is misunderstandings, but realize that not everyone will always be either because of health or circumstances or what have you. But if you just stay the course, and I like to say, stick to the work until the work sticks to you, because beginners are many and enders are few. And we need to be the enders who stay the course, who are there for the long haul. It's a marathon. It's not a 100-yard dash. So thanks, everyone. And as Tom likes to say at the conclusion of these webinars, is the next step is up to you. Contact your marketer who brought you on. You'll get a copy of this recording from your marketer, and go to the site that Tom just took you through. And when you get time, we know we're all busy, but part of the real key, the real secret sauce to being successful in having these conversations is the preparation side of the business. Don't just show up. You got to, staying up at the plate and ready to swing, unless you had batting practice before, chances are you're not going to do well in the game. And it's the same here. So thanks, everyone, for joining us.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. Have a good day.
The next step is yours. Contact your marketer for more information and to start offering short-term care solutions to your clients. And be sure to sign up for our other short-term care hot topic webinars.